Hello, hello! Pizza Pax here, and welcome back to Throwback Thursday, episode number 48. This week we're starting the Berlin World Championships from August 2003. So, got the different decks in the order that they placed. So, we are going to start with Wolfgang Eder. So, let's get started. Now, finding these decks was surprisingly difficult, considering this was one of the lowest power years of the years that they did these for. Finding them sealed even more so, as you can see by the fact that I only have 2 of them sealed. And one of these I already owned before the... Actually, I think I owned 2 of them beforehand. So let's get started with Wolfgang Eder. Let's see, quarterfinalist Wolfgang Eder. Wolfgang Eder introduced the black-red Goblin Bidding deck to the world at the European Championships. The typical Goblin Horde deck gets an incredible mid-game play in Patriarch's Bidding, which brings every goblin in the graveyard back into play. Good old Goblin Bidding. Oh, this actually has an internally sealed deck. They didn't do these for many years, and I actually forgot that they even did these at all this way. Let's get started with Wolfgang Eder's deck. Goblin Bidding. Let's see if we can get that to focus a little better. There we go. Main deck. Starting with creatures, we have 3 Gem Palm Incinerator from Legions. 1 Goblin Grappler, also from Legions. 4 Goblin Pile Driver from Onslaught, still sees quite a bit of play in Goblin decks. 2 Goblin Sharpshooter from Onslaught. 4 Goblin Sledder from Onslaught. 3 Goblin Taskmaster from Onslaught. I wonder what set was good for goblins. 4 Goblin Warchief from Scourge. Or 4 Goblin Warchief. 4 Siege Gang Commander from Scourge, which has a rather naughty nickname. 3 Skirk Prospector from Onslaught, 4 Sparksmith from Onslaught, 3 Patriarch's Bidding from Onslaught, 3 Smother from Onslaught, 4 Bloodstained Mire from Onslaught, 1 City of Brass from 8th edition, 10 Mountain from 8th edition, 3 Shadowblood Ridge from Odyssey, 4 Swamp from 8th edition, and then for our sideboard, we have 2 Cabal Therapy from Judgment, 2 Dark Banishing from 8th edition, 2 Flaring Pain from Judgment, 1 Smother from Onslaught, 4 Starstorm from Onslaught, and 4 Sulfuric Vortex from Scourge. Very nice. Many of these cards have become absolutely iconic in Goblin strategies, and even just straight up burn decks. So let's see what Eder built. Collect all 4 World Championship decks. Relive the excitement of the 2003 World Championships with these 4 commemorative decks. Daniel Zink, World Champion. Zink's White, Blue, Green Wake deck is a control deck at heart. Once the powerful enchantment Mirari's Wake is in play, the deck produces more mana, draws more cards, counters more spells, and makes more soldiers than opponents can possibly handle. Nice. Dave Humphreys, semifinalist. Dave the Hump Humphreys, blue-green deck, combines the many Madness cards from the Torment set, including Basking Rootwalla, Arrogant Worm, and Circular Logic, with discard enablers like Aquamoeba and Wild Mongrel for tremendous effect. Peter Kruger, that'll be next week, quarterfinalist. Hometown hero Peter Kruger's Reanimator deck was a nightmare for his opponents. This black-red deck excels at putting scary monsters into the graveyard, then bringing them back into play. And then this deck, Wolfgang Eder. Quarterfinalist, Wolfgang Eder introduced the black-red Goblin Bidding deck to the world at the European Championships. Typical Goblin Horde deck gets an incredible mid-game play in Patriarch's Bidding, which brings every goblin in the graveyard back into play. Alright, so now let's look at the deck. See, normally we do the sideboard first. So we're going to jump over to the sideboard. Wolfgang Eder introduced this black-red Goblin Bidding deck to the world at this year's European Championships. The 22-year-old student from Venheim, Germany, says that the inspiration for the deck came from trying to give the typical Goblin tribe something to do in the mid-game. He achieved this by adding black to the deck for Patriarch's Bidding, which brings every Goblin in the graveyard back into play. And with cards like Goblin War Chief and Siege Gang Commander, those goblins have haste and bring friends with them. A resolved Patriarch's Bidding is usually game over. Very cool. So let's look at the sideboard. We have Cabal Therapy. This is the Judgment printing, art by Ron Spencer. For a black, it's a sorcery. Name a non-land card. Target player reveals his or her hand and discards from it all cards with that name. Flashback, sacrifice a creature. This is one of those cards that's a true test of skill of a good Magic player in the formats that it's legal. Which right now it's mostly pre-modern and Legacy and Vintage. It doesn't really see as much Vintage play, but definitely sees Legacy and pre-modern play. We have 2 copies. Next up, Dark Banishing. This is the kind of removal we used to have to deal with. Dark Banishing was the best option for this sideboard slot. That's sad. 2 and a black. Dark Banishing. This is the 8th edition printing with art by Dermot Power. 2 and a black, instant. Destroy target non-black creature. It can't be regenerated. It's a worse terror for 1 more. We have 2 copies. Next up, Flaring Pain. I think it's the only time it's ever been printed in this frame. It is in this deck. But this is the Judgment printing in a modern card frame, which is a little strange. Several of these have different card frames than how they were printed originally. Art by Glenn Angus. 1 and a red, instant. Damage can't be prevented this turn. So that includes like from protection as well. And then flashback for a red. So you may play this card from your graveyard for its flashback cost, then remove it from the game. We have 2 copies. Next up, Smother. The Onslaught printing, art by Carl Critchlow. 1 and a black, instant. Destroy target creature with converted mana cost 3 or less. It can't be regenerated. Again, not printed in that frame originally. Starstorm, also not printed in this frame. This is the Onslaught printing, art by David Martin, but X red instant. It deals X damage to each creature, and then it cycles for 3. We should have 4 copies of Starstorm. Which is nice because it's broad removal that you can then cycle away when you don't need it. So it should never be a dead card, or rarely be a dead card. Sulfuric Vortex, also not printed in this frame originally. From Scourge, art by Greg Staples. 1 red enchantment. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, Sulfuric Vortex deals 2 damage to that player. If a player would gain life, that player gains no life instead. This was a huge way of counteracting several strategies, including the Reanimator deck that ended up doing a little bit better in this event. This shuts off lifelink, which was a big deal at the time. Also shuts off a number of life gain spells such as Renewed Faith. This was so good, it has been a staple of Burn and Red Deck Win decks since it was printed in every format that it's legal. Still occasionally sees play in Modern, if I remember correctly. Definitely sees play in Pre-Modern. Now, for the main deck. Yeah. First up, we have Gem Palm Incinerator. Again, many of these cards were never printed in this frame, or at least not at this point. This is using the 8th edition frame, and almost all of these cards predate 8th edition. So we have Gem Palm Incinerator, art by Luca Zontini from Legions. 2 and a green for a 2/1 goblin with cycling, 1 and a red. When you cycle Gem Palm Incinerator, you may have it deal X damage to target creature, where X is the number of goblins in play. So it is a removal spell and a goblin altogether. It's a cantripping removal spell at that. So we have 3 copies of Goblin Incinerator. Yeah, I think there were 4. Goblin Grappler, also from Legions. Art by Christopher Moliere. For red, it's a 1/1 goblin with Provoke. Provoke is one of those keywords you may have never seen, because it was pretty much only in Legions. When this creature attacks, you may have target creature defending player controls untap and block it if able. You can force your opponent's creatures to block your creatures with Provoke. It's kind of great. Next up, we have the Goblin All-Star, the King of the Goblins. Goblin Pile Driver. From Onslaught, art by Matt Kavoda. 1 and a red for a 1/2 goblin with protection from blue. One of the rare cards that has protection from blue. Now, whenever it attacks, it gets +2/+0 until end of turn for each other attacking goblin. It's real big, real fast, and hits like a truck. We have 4 copies of Goblin Pile Driver. Next up, Goblin Sharpshooter. This card has so many combos with it over the years. But this is from Onslaught, art by Greg Staples. 2 and a red for a 1/1 goblin. It doesn't untap during your untap step, but whenever a creature is put into a graveyard from play, you untap Goblin Sharpshooter. And then tap Goblin Sharpshooter, deals 1 damage to target creature or player. This probably should have read into a opponent's graveyard, but because it is to your graveyard, whenever you sacrifice a creature, that untaps it as well. So this can lead to some really big, really splashy turns. It just goes infinite with a ham sandwich. We have 2 copies of Goblin Sharpshooter. Next up, Goblin Sledder, also from Onslaught, art by Ron Spencer. For red, it's a 1/1 goblin that you could sacrifice a goblin to give target creature +1/+1 until end of turn. Also, apparently this copy is misprinted. It's like all 4 copies are misprinted. There's a line, a white line going through these. I wonder if that sheet was misprinted. It's kind of cool. Goblin Taskmaster, also from Onslaught. Art by Trevor Hairstein. Or Hairsign? Trevor Hairsign. For red, it's a 1/1 goblin. 1 and a red. Target goblin gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Morph for red. I think this is just in here to be a 1-drop that does things. Could be wrong, though. Got 3 copies of Goblin Taskmaster. Next up, Goblin Warchief from Scourge. One of the best goblins ever printed. Art by Tim Hildebrandt. 1 red for a 2/2 goblin. Goblin spells you play cost 1 less to play. Goblins you control have haste. That seems pretty innocuous. Until you have these in multiples. Or even just one with a Goblin Prospector. This is an extremely explosive card. And we have 4 copies of Goblin Warchief. Keep in mind, it also gives itself haste, because it doesn't say other goblins. Siege Gang Commander, which has a rather inappropriate nickname. Still a funny one, though. From Scourge, art by Christopher Moliere, or Moliere. 3 red for a 2/2 goblin. When it comes into play, put 3 +1/+1, or not +1/+1, put 3 1/1 red goblin creature tokens into play. 1 in a red, sacrifice a goblin. Doesn't have to be one of the tokens, it's any goblin. Siege Gang Commander deals 2 damage to hurt creature or player. I think this has been errated to be another goblin, but as printed, it can sacrifice itself. So, With a War Chief in play, you can play it on turn 5, potentially turn 4. The Prospector, attack out, and then the next turn just fling goblins at your opponent to close out the game. And we have 3. That's not right. Deck list says 4. There's 3 here. There's the 4th one. It's miscollated. 4 Siege Gang Commander. Skirk Prospector. I've mentioned it a few times now. This is the fuse that sets off this deck. This printing is from Onslaught, art by Doug Chaffee. For a red, it's a 1/1 goblin that you can sacrifice a goblin to add red to your mana pool. Doesn't seem like much, but gets real explosive real fast. We have 3 Goblin or Skirk Prospector. Next up, Sparksmith. Another card, like several of these cards see Pauper play, see Modern play, see a ton of pre-Modern play. Sparksmith from Onslaught, art by Jim Nelson. 1 in a red for a 1/1 goblin. Tap, it deals X damage to target creature and X damage to you, where X is the number of goblins in play. This can keep your opponent from ever sticking a creature. Pretty easily, actually. And while they try to keep a creature in play, you're just beating down with other goblins. And we have 4 copies of Sparksmith. Next up, Patriarch's Bidding from Onslaught, art by Ben Thompson. 3 black for sorcery. Each player chooses a creature type. Each player returns all creature cards of the chosen type of the type chosen this way from his or her graveyard to play. Say you sacrifice a bunch of stuff to your Skirk Prospector, fling a bunch of things with your Siege Gang Commander while pinging with Sharpshooter along the way. Then you windmill slam Patriarch's Bidding, which you can make cheaper by sacrificing things to your Skirk Prospector. Or you can pay for a large portion of it from the Skirk Prospector. And then you get to do it again. Do it again. Do it again. We have 3 Patriarch's Bidding. Except we have Smother. We also had this in the sideboard. Onslaught, art by Carl Critchlow. 1 in a black, instant, destroy target creature with converted mana cost 3 or less. It can't be regenerated. 3 copies of Smother. Alright, now we have our first appearance of fetches in the World's Championship decks. We have Bloodstained Mire, still a staple in Modern. For the longest time, this actually wasn't legal in Modern until it got reprinted in Khans of Tarkir. But it's a land that tap, pay a life, and sacrifice it. Search your library for a swamp or mountain and put it into play. Then shuffle your library. I remember arguing with people when this set came out that these cards were amazing. But still, people will try to argue that they're not good. They are some of the best lands ever printed. Just accept that. Like, if you think these cards are bad, just accept that you're wrong. Because that is the case. They are played in Vintage, Legacy, Modern, Pre-Modern. When they're legal in Standard, they're played in Standard. Only place they're not legal, really, when they're in print is Pioneer. And that's because they've been banned out of Pioneer preemptively. We have 4 copies of Bloodstained Mire. Next up, we have City of Brass, one of my favorite lands of all time. Whenever it becomes tapped, it deals 1 damage to you, which is a trigger. And then tap, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. So you can actually respond to that damage trigger. Important detail. And that has art by... Sorry, Bloodstained Mire has art by one of my favorite artists of all time as well, Rob Alexander. Can't believe I tried to skip Rob. And then this City of Brass has art by Ron Budlotsky. Very nice. Next up, we have our basics. Oh, there's Shadowblood Ridge in between, though. Let's see. This is 8th edition printing, art by John Avon. We have 3 copies of that art. Another 8th edition printing with art by John Avon. I believe that was originally in Mirage. We have 4 copies. We have an 8th edition printing with art by Rob Alexander. We have 3 copies of Mountain. Except Shadowblood Ridge from Odyssey, art by Glenn Angus. Converts 1 mana of any color into black-red. Also, not printed in this card frame. Funny enough. And we have 3 copies of Shadowblood Ridge. And last but not least, we have 4 Swamps. 8th edition printing with art by Bob Eggleton. Originally printed in Mirage. I believe this was a Tempest printing originally, but 8th edition printing with art by John Avon. And then 2 8th edition printings with art by Larry Elmore. Very nice. Alright, well thank you for joining me on this adventure with Wolfgang Eder's Goblin Bidding deck from quarterfinals of 2003 Worlds. As always, don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff for the algorithm. It really helps us out, and I really appreciate it. And until next time, stay awesome. We'll see you in the next one. Thanks. Bye.